All right, I'm gonna show you how to create this piece of op art. And I'm going to be using a Sharpie, a black marker for my background. And then for my colors, I'm gonna use some colored pencils. I'm gonna kind of show you guys how to do some blending, which is really fun. All right. First thing we're gonna do is write our name and class code on your paper. Okay, we're gonna flip it over and then we're gonna get busy on our color part. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm gonna use a pencil, and I may use a Sharpie because I feel like I can get this. What we're gonna do is we're going to create the stripe that goes across our paper. You'll notice that mine is wider at one end and narrow at the other. You may do that. You can do flip-flop of what I have, or you can keep it the same distance the way it goes across your paper. Okay, but we're gonna do it from one corner to the other. You can also do it from this corner down to this corner. Either is fine. So let's do this. Okay, I'm gonna do a nice big stripe on mine. All right, the other thing that I forgot we're gonna need is, you can use a ruler if you want. You'll notice here, this is a good spot to see. You'll notice that my lines going this way are straight, but my lines going this way are not. You have a choice on how you do these lines. You can keep up and down and side to side both straight, or you can do what I've done, one of each, or you can do both of them wonky. It is up to you, okay? I'm going to do both of mine kind of a wonky. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna kind of do some wonky lines, and they don't have to repeat, okay? The big thing though is, see how I've got them underneath my stripe here, okay? When I think about up here, I have to envision what those wonky lines would look like up here. So this one, whoop, that's all right. Don't mark on your paper. My paper got stuck on my hand. All right, he might do that, and this one might do that over there. Okay, then this one here might do that, and then I have this one here, might do that, and then I have one here, there, and then I don't have one over here, but I have a large amount of space, so I'm gonna add one more there, okay? Now I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna do vertically. I've decided to do both of my lines wonky because I've never tried one of those, so I'm gonna try that. Okay, then like I said, I got to envision what my line might look like down over here. It's kind of almost taking your background and making it into a grid. Okay, now you'll notice here on mine, my grid squares are pretty big compared to the size of these. That's okay. The more lines that you have, the smaller your spaces will be. The bigger spaces will be fewer lines, okay? So now what I'm gonna do, now that I've got this marked off, is I'm going to use my black marker here, and I'm going to color in my every other space to create kind of like a wonky checkerboard. So we're gonna do that. Okay, now that I've finished with my background space using the black and the whites, you kind of noticed during the time lapse that like any place where I got to where my colored stripe was covering up, I had to think about like, okay, this one was black, but I have a separate stripe going here. So there's actually a space hidden behind this area that would be white, which would tell me that my next space over here would be black. Okay, by doing that, you're going to avoid any places where your spaces might meet and then you end up with squares that don't match up, meaning you end up with like two whites next to each other or two blacks next to each other. So if you kind of think about this colored stripe being something that's laid on top of your background, and think about your background as being like a solid piece and imagining what it might look like underneath. That will help you with the two sections. Okay, next what I'm gonna do is we're gonna use some colored pencils, and I'm gonna color in my stripe here. You can do some blending. Remember, on any of these projects, you do not have to use the same supplies that I'm using. You have the freedom to use crayons, colored pencils, markers, watercolor paints, or oil pastels, okay? So I'm gonna use colored pencils for my color stripes, so I'm gonna show you what that is. I'm going to imagine that my accidental little black mark is not there. So we'll see how it goes. All right, there you have it. We have our colors blended. I can still see my little black mark, but that's okay. So I've got my colors blended. You'll notice that when I do my blending of colors where it's just the pure color, I try to make it dark. And then as I get to the area where it's gonna blend, each color's pretty light, and I kind of overlap them you know, a couple of times to kind of make sure that they blend together. Another thing that you can do, which is really weird because it is colored pencils, is you can kind of rub your finger across them and it will kind of smooth things out. It's a little hard to see, but it does kind of blend things in just a little bit, which is kind of nice. Okay, like you can see I've got some color on my finger there. It's probably the oils from your fingers, from your skin, kind of mixing with the colored pencils and just kind of smoothing things out just a little. There we go, like you can see my fingers kind of pulled some of that off. So you can do that as well. I have had some students use white in the past, kind of in the middle to kind of make things look a little bit lighter. Like you've got some 3D shape to it, so you've got a highlight and a shadow, meaning when it gets to like some curves here, depending on how they want it, they might make things look a little bit darker with that to kind of give their color section a little bit more of a 3D shape. I can show you how to do that if you decide to, but it is completely optional. I choose not to on mine. Another thing I will say is when you're coloring, I know it's a little hard to see, but I ended up getting a little bit of blue outside my line. As long as it's fairly light with your colored pencil, you can actually go back with an eraser and erase the colored pencil as long as it's really light. If it's a really dark line, you might be able to lighten it some, but it's not fully going to go away. So that's kind of a trick that I've learned over the years. And there you go.